Okay, in this short video, I want to continue talking about a theme. What is a theme? And I'm really going to narrow it down to what is a literary theme. All right, so there are themes that you might write that don't necessarily deal with a literary text, but I think it would be best to approach this whole notion by coming at it specifically from one angle, and that's the angle of theme writing for literary texts. Okay, so before I continue on, just to make sure, you should know that you can write themes for other things beside literary pieces, but we're going to focus on that to get a grip on the basic method. Now, the idea for this, or the term for this, is just your literary theme. Okay, but you might also hear it as an aesthetic theme. Or it could go under write an analysis of the aesthetics for X, or write a theme on the aesthetics of X. Okay, so it's all basically the same. Now, you've had to deal with. I've given you a narrative, a short story, or a novel, or a novella, which is just a short novel, or a poem to work with. So that's your artifact, and because it's so heavily involved with design and structure, and that itself has some meaning that conveys it to the context, the content of the thing you're looking at. It's an aesthetic artifact. Okay, so when you come to write a theme on this, it is okay. This is how it's different from the research. From academic research, it is okay when you come to write a theme on an aesthetic artifact like a poem to just stay within the boundaries of the artifact itself, the beginning and the end. If you want to look at these as the cover pages, it's okay when you write your theme to stay within those cover pages. You don't have to go outside to find any sort of historic data or any sort of researched material to bring into your theme to make your points stand. Although, you know, some teachers will certainly allow that and maybe even encourage it, you don't have to have that. In theme writing, especially for literary themes, it is okay for you to focus only within the beginning and the end, and just on the object itself. So, you know, think about the book or the poem that I'm having you read, and ask yourself, within that object, what are some observations I can make that I can back up from places in the story or in the poem. I can pull those out again, and I can so if you were to write, now you don't have to incorporate more than one item to examine. But you might have ideas of various ones to examine. For example, you might look at the way your literary piece, your poem, or the short story you read, or the book you read, deals with nature. You know, what is the function of trees or the countryside or animals? You might want to just focus on how does this artifact, how does this book, what can I, if I were to analyze the use of animals in this by this author, what might I be able to say? And you would have to push it beyond the obvious. So it's item analysis, but you're looking at maybe one element within the larger structure of the whole, and you're really trying to see it work out throughout the whole book. So you might want to look at how children are treated in X. You know, the title might be "The Misuse of Children in this piece." And think to yourself, okay, well, you know, I've read the book, and I'm convinced that this children are misused here. They are portrayed primarily as objects rather than as people. They're primarily portrayed by this author in this work as mirrors of adults. Okay, all right. Now, so that would be the topic that you would be pursuing, or I should say the observation you would be pursuing throughout the theme. And you would start at the beginning and go all the way to the end and ask yourself, where exactly in this text does the author talk about this, or provide evidence that I could interpret as here's proof, here's proof, here's proof. Over here in this chapter is some more proof, and this other chapter is some more proof. When you end the book over here, it's proof. So what you would be doing in the theme is say, look, here's what I'm investigating. Here's where it shows up in the texts. Quote from those areas. Here's what I think it means. Okay, so you end with an interpretation, and that's like the skeleton. That's some of the major points of a literary theme. So think about a certain poem that might talk about sickness or dreams. Now, if in that same poem it talks about say hunting animals, you don't have to like do both in a theme. You can focus just on one. The notion of the troubling dream and then you put the title of the work, that would be your title, and then talk about how the dreams are troubling in this book. Give proof from the text, quote from the text, so that your reader can see, in fact, that dreams are a very troubled issue here. They're nightmares, and here's what they look like. And there's always in this nightmare a lot of darkness, it's in the dream itself. There are dark spaces, there are dark rooms. So then you get it even more specific, and actually, if you can actually show that, maybe your title should be The Dark Spaces in the Dark Dreams, and now you have a very specific focus. You know exactly what to bring out of the text to give to your reader to show that it is indeed there, and then you can, after that's done, you can move on to trying to explain what you think the author was doing with this. And now, one rule of thumb is to always assume that the reader that's going to read your literary theme has not read the book. So unless whoever is evaluating your work tells you, assume that, I know it. You do need to provide a lot of textual evidence. Bring in the text, okay, to show the reader that in fact what you are saying is there. That's the first step, to establish the existence of that observation you're looking at. And then after that's done, then you can begin the motion or the process of explaining what you think it means. So, another example might be toys. Toys in the novel. How are toys used? Where are they used? So you go looking for patterns. What if the toys are always kept in closets? Well, what does that mean? Now, there might be exceptions, but if you can show that 8 of the 10 times that the toys were mentioned in the book, they were talked about being stacked neatly in a closet. Well, think about, what were toys meant to be used for? To play, for children. They're meant to be out and about, used. A good toy is a used toy. So, what does this suggest to you concerning the pent-up potential? The penning up of an object, sort of like putting it in prison, keeping it from its proper use, having it but not having it, that sort of. And then you can delve deeper into that notion, okay. But to really make it stick, the first part of your literary theme then should just very efficiently and copiously, show the reader, hey, look, here it is. Look in chapter 2, or in this stanza. Again, toys are mentioned. Let me quote for you. You see how they're penned up in a closet. And you really establish the fact there, and then you can go down to asking yourself in front of the reader, unpacking the notion of what does it mean to have a toy, what are toys meant to do, what does it mean to have a toy in a closet, stacked nicely, out of use, you have it but you don't want to use it, all that sort of thing. Okay, so that's how you would write a literary theme, and you might notice a few things in the artifact that you can talk about. Oh yeah, I can do toys. I can examine toys in particular, or I can examine the use of anger. How the author uses anger throughout the work, or I could talk about capitalistic principles in this dialogue or in this poem. The economy of selling and buying and Chaucer's Parliament of Fowls, or whatever, that sort of thing. But the mistake would be to try to do like two themes in one. No, just pick one to focus on. Even though hey, I've got two or three or four things I could follow. Pick the one you think you could do the best and focus on that. So one thing I find students struggling with here is they actually understand the work very well, and they see a couple things that they want to talk about, but in fact those things they want to talk about aren't unified, or they're not drawing the connections correctly between the two, and it really turns in that they're turning two papers in the guise of one. They're just chunking it all in there. So I would say, even though you might have a couple good ideas, pick just one and make sure your paper is all about unpacking, unraveling, and dissecting and explaining that one thing, all right, between the text, the covers, between the beginning and the end. That's where you pull your textual data from. It's in the form of just quotations from the text to establish the presence of that object that you're analyzing, or that situation, or that habit. And then once that's established, you end by explaining what you think it means.